This is the third video of section 5 on developing the application. In this video, we will generate a grid with animals to select our own animal and then fight the match with it. In short, that means adding an animal grid directive, then adding the logic to select an animal to fight with, and then fighting the match and showing the outcome. First, we'll create a small grid containing all animals. We can then choose an animal from this list to fight the match with. Let's start by creating a new directive in the directives folder. Just like last time, we create a new directory with the directive's name. In this case, that's animal grid. Create a JavaScript file with the same name in this directory. In this file, we'll declare our directive first. Let's call it animal grid. Again, keep the camel casing in mind. Pass in the template's URL. We'll create the template in just a second. And the URL is scripts/directives/animalgrid/animalgrid.html. We don't need a controller here since this directive just serves as a template. Let's add that template we just declared. In the animal grid directive folder, let's add an animalgrid.html file. In this directive, we'll add a basic list with the animal's name. We'll add a repeat on the arena.allAnimals property, which we'll add to our controller in just a second. And for the content of the element, we're just going to add the animal's name for now. Alright. Okay, back in the arena controller, we need a list of all the animals for the grid directive. Let's add our animal service and then add the animals collection to our controller. We'll do this by using the findAll method we created in one of the previous sections. Now that we've got a grid of all the animals available to us, let's add the logic to actually select the animal. We'll add two functions to our arena controller. The first one selects the animal by passing it to the controller, which then sets the player's animal on the scope. Next, we'll add a method to check if an animal in the grid is the selected one. This will allow us to highlight the animal in the grid to show our current selection. So first we'll check if there is actually a player animal selected, and if there is, let's check if the ID of the selected animal matches the ID of the animal passed into the function. And finally, we're going to expand our animal grid template with the new stuff we just built in the arena controller. Let's open up the animalgrid.html file again. We'll add a click handler to select the animal inside the ng repeat, and also add a selected class if the animal is the selected one. So ng-click fires off the selectAnimal function in our controller, and class is just going to add selected if it is the selected animal. And lastly, let's format the HTML so it becomes a little more readable. If I have a lot of attributes, I like to put them on a different line each. Makes it easier to read. And then I'm just going to add this on a new line as well. Okay, great. Now that we have an animal we can fight the match with, again in our arena controller, we'll add a new method to fight the match. All we need to do is use our arena service method and pass in all the relevant arguments. So vm.matchWinner is arena.determineWinner. In order, they are the player animal, the opponent's animal, and finally the terrain in which we'll be fighting. So let's go back to our view. Alright. Then let's add a new section. We're going to add a title saying choose your animal, and in here we're going to add our animal grid directive. Okay. Next up is sort of like a hinting phrase for the player to see what he's fighting against and which animal he has chosen. So let's just say you're fighting as a, and then the name of the animal, against a, and then the opponent, and then also the name of that animal. And let's also include the terrain just to make sure they know everything there is to need to know. Okay. Let's format it. Okay, looks good. Now let's add a button to trigger the actual fight. So let's say ng-click arena.fightMatch. Add a label as well. Let's call it fight match. Okay, let's make sure animal grid doesn't show if there is a match winner. And we should show something else if there is a match winner to show the outcome to the user. if they won, lost, or if there's a draw. Now that we've linked our button to triggering the match fight and we have the outcome, let's show the winner in the template too. Keep in mind that there are 3 scenarios. The player either wins, the opponent wins, or the match was a draw. Okay, let's go back to our index.html and add all the scripts we just created. So animal grid, animalgrid.js. Make sure it's loaded. And there we go. We get an animal grid saying choose your animal. Let's select an animal, find the match. Alright, it just shows the match outcome now, which is what we want. Let's go back and add some additional functionality. I'd like to reset the match after one has been played so you can play again easily. Let's add a button here. Add the ng-click directive. And let's say arena.resetMatch. That's a function we're going to create in just a second. Let's add some text to the button. Play again should do it for now. Let's go back to our arena controller. Alright. First thing we're going to do is create our function for resetting the match. So let's take all this and cut it. And we're going to wrap it inside a function. Let's call it generate matchup. Alright, just paste in the code. And then execute it straight away so that we can generate a match when the controller is first instantiated. Let's create a new method on the scope called resetMatch. When that's clicked, we are going to clear the matchup. Let's just set it to undefined. Let's do the same thing for the match winner as well. And lastly, we're going to generate a new matchup. Okay. Now let's see if it works. Let's choose an animal, find the match. Alright, now we have a button, play again, let's click it, and there we go, it generates a new matchup for us to play. Okay, perfect, we've successfully linked all functionality together for the arena view. We've added an animal grid that makes it easy to select an animal to fight with. And lastly, we've triggered the match to be fought and then showed the outcome. The last part in this section will be adding a small dashboard view with some metadata information.